have a brief look at where your flowers come from and then the process that they go through before they actually get to you as the florist to be able to work with. So we have our growers, of course, and I hope that you can find your local growers within your area so that you can source flowers from them directly. However, some growers will not deal direct with florists, and so if that's the case, then you'll be dealing with wholesalers. So the grower grows the flowers, whether they grow them in hothouses or in the field, and then they take them either to a big wholesale market where a wholesaler will purchase them from. Then you'll be able to purchase them from the wholesaler directly. Of course, in some parts of the world, we have flower markets where the growers will go directly to, the florists can come and purchase from them, straight from them, okay? But in some instances, there's a mix and a blend of all of those. However, when you do receive your flowers, this is the next step we're going to go through and what process you need to take when you do get them, okay? So I'm going to grab some flowers and let's get started with that. So whether you receive your flowers by delivery direct from either the grower or the wholesaler, or if you go to the wholesaler or market and collect them, generally you're going to receive them in these black plastic buckets, okay? Now the flowers will need preparing. Now before that, you'll see how they're in their plastic, okay? And that's how the growers will put them for transportation, okay? Now, once we get them in this state, the first thing we need to do is to check that we've received what we've actually ordered. So you'll have your delivery docket or delivery notice. You'll also have printed off what you've actually ordered as well, so that you can match them and make sure that what you've received is what you ordered. Sometimes there's discrepancies, and often it's because things have just not been available, okay? So that's where you need to have really good communication with your suppliers and growers. From there, you're going to check the quality of your flowers. So that's absolutely extremely important that you do that first thing. And so you're actually looking at each material, each bunch that you've received, and then each individual flower to make sure that the quality is up to your very highest of standards, which should be very, very high. If you ever receive something that is not up to your high standard, then again, that's where communication between yourself, your grower, or the wholesaler is most important. So you need to be able to contact them immediately. Generally, it's best practice that you would take a photo of the materials that may not be up to standard and then send that off, whether it's via text or email, send that off to the supplier or wholesaler so that they can see the material. Often, if it's the wholesaler, they've received it that way from the grower and they just haven't noticed it before they've given it to you. Generally speaking, people only want to give you the highest of quality flowers. They're certainly not looking to rip you off in any way, and it's just that it's gone unnoticed. So it is your job to make sure that you've got really good quality stock that you've received. So you'll do that, you'll check that everything's fine and everything's great. And in those instances when it's not, again, it will depend on that relationship that you've got, whether you'll receive I can't think of the word now, whether they will refund you, that's it, for that cost of the bunch of flowers, or whether they will actually be able to supply you with another one, okay? So you'll go through that process. Then the next thing that you want to do is start what we call conditioning the flowers. So this is extremely important, and I'm going to take you through the process. To get ready to do this for yourself, you'll need to make sure you've got your apron on, your towel, your snips, and your gloves. So all those things, get them ready, and then I'll meet you back here to start going through the flowers one by one. Okay, so one of the first things that we need to do when we receive flowers is to remove the plastic. So the growers love to put the plastic on them. It does protect the flower and it makes it very easy for them to transport them. However, majority of flower varieties will actually sweat. Because the flower stem holds so much moisture, once it's trapped in that plastic, it doesn't generate any airflow through there, and then the moisture of that flower starts to come out and sweat between the plastic. Then we'll get mouldy flowers. So the job of a florist, one of the first things to do is to remove that plastic. And it is one of those things that sets us apart from a greengrocer and also a supermarket who sell flowers. They don't, generally speaking, put that level of care into the flowers. So it's just one of those things that sets us apart. So very important, and it's the first thing I'm going to do now. So to cut the plastic off, you can use your flower cutting snips, or you can use ribbon scissors or paper cutting scissors to remove them. So as you can see, I started from the bottom and went up. Okay, then I'm less likely to damage any of the flowers underneath by doing it in that motion. So here we have some field grown stock. So these have been grown out in the field, which is wonderful. Way back when I started floristry, lots of flowers were starting to be grown in glass houses, and in fact we actually preferred those flower varieties back then. But the industry has changed so much now, and so has the wants and needs of the consumers as well. And so we actually now are really loving the field grown flowers, and they are fewer as well due to droughts. Yeah, it's obviously less water to be able to water the crops with. Flower production outside has lessened, and so we have got more flowers being grown in hothouses now. And so when we do get field grown flowers in their season, we absolutely love them, and these stock are those. So I'll remove that plastic, pop that in a bin. So you want to make sure you've got your bin right below where you're working, so you're constantly putting any rubbish into that bin, and then you're less likely to slip on anything underfoot. Because a leaf underneath on the floor is just like slipping on a banana peel. There's so much moisture in there, so we don't want you doing that. So then the job of the florist is to remove any leaves that are going to be what we call below the water line. Okay, so if these were put into a vase, now we might have the vase water level up to approximately here, and so it's removing a lot of those leaves. So some of these have actually been done. Some growers are starting to do that themselves now, which is wonderful, but it is most definitely the job of the florist to make sure that they're nice and neat and tidy. Okay, so I'll pop those aside for a moment whilst I just show you an example of glasshouse grown stock. Okay, so these are the stock. So S-T-O-C-K. These are the stock that have been grown out happily in the field, receiving natural sunlight, unfiltered. And these are stock that have been grown in a glass house. Okay? So quite different, a lot larger flower head there, which you can see. And often, but not necessarily in this case, but often the stems of glasshouse grown flowers are actually stronger as well. They also, the benefits of them is that they generally have less damage to them due to the weather. Okay? So again, I'm going to take the plastic off these. So starting at the bottom, taking the plastic up, I'll remove that one flower head, that bloom that had broken off from the base. That goes in the bin along with those two others, and the plastic goes in the bin. Okay. I'm then going to remove the elastic bands that were around the stems, holding them together. This is where I need to most definitely have my gloves on. Okay, and this is where I'll start to remove and make sure that there's no damaged leaves on the stems of the blooms, and nothing that's going to be left below that water level. Okay, so working straight into the bin, so nice and neat. Now that's a damaged one, okay, damaged stem there, so you can see that that's broken. And you can usually tell by the break from the colour of it whether it's a new break or if it was one that was caused prior to you receiving it. Okay, so if it's a prior to receiving it, if it's just one in the bunch, and it is, not a very expensive bunch of flowers, then you may just decide to let it go. If it was more than one stem in the bunch that was damaged and broken upon you receiving it, then you're most likely going to go back to that grower or wholesaler and let them know about it. Okay? So keep removing the leaves. So the gloves are fantastic for stripping leaves off the stems because you can just take the gloves straight down. It's not going to damage the stem. You can be nice and soft but firm enough to get those leaves directly off. There's not too many on here to need to take off, but they do need some cleaning up. Now the reason why we remove all the leaves off the stems of flowers that are going to be below that water level is because it's these leaves sitting in the water that create bacteria. So the bacteria starts to grow in the water, then the flowers are drinking the water with all that bacteria in it, and of course that shortens the lifespan. So what we know is that flowers love clean, fresh water. So bacteria-free water. So we most definitely want to make sure that that's what we're giving them. Often the supermarkets and greengrocers will leave the flowers in these black plastic buckets, okay? Unlike us, which we're going to put them into some beautiful fresh water, they'll leave them in those buckets of water, which you don't know how long that they've actually been in there for. And so the water hasn't been replenished and it's certainly not free of bacteria, okay? So that's again, one of the differences of a professional florist. So that's the bunch of stock done that was the glasshouse one. I'm just going to pull out that damaged, and you never know, we might still be able to use that last little bit there. So I'll pop that aside and move on to the next bunch, which are the field grown varieties. So a really beautiful, very healthy looking stem there with some gorgeous leaves on it. So the stock come in a number of different colours. I've got a few to show you today. We've got the pink, purples, we've got lemon here as well, and a lovely white. So generally they are a fairly inexpensive flower, not the most longest lasting, but certainly well worth it though. Okay, so removing all those stems, there's just 2 to go. Now in the beginning you might find that you can be a little bit timid with the flowers. So many students here at Bloom College, we find at the start when they're handling the flowers, they can be, as I said, a little bit timid and a little bit wary and worried about breaking or damaging the flowers. After time and lots of practice, you'll get very efficient with removing those leaves. But one tip I can give you is that if you hold the stem approximately halfway down, okay, or just slightly higher than halfway, and then remove the leaves, you're actually protecting the stem. What's really important is that you don't hold the stem too high up near the bloom and then remove the leaves. Often what we see is that heads come flying off as well. So we only want to remove the leaves, not the bloom, okay? So after a while you'll get very efficient with this and your speed will increase, which is most important for commercial floristry because you really want to spend most of your time arranging flowers and spending time with clients as opposed to caring and maintenance, okay? It's a very important part, and we have to do it, absolutely, but we want to do it as quickly and as most efficiently as we can, okay? So these flowers are ready to go in a vase now, so I'm going to get their vase ready and demonstrate how we cut and put them in. So I've gone ahead and I've removed all the leaves from the lower part of the stem that will be going into the water, okay? So you can go ahead and do all of those. I've got 3 bunches of the field grown stock here in the beautiful white, the lemon and the purple, and then we've also got the pink in the glasshouse grown as well. Now generally speaking, these types of flowers are in a lower price point and we're mostly selling them in their bunches. So it means that we need to bundle them back up into the bunches as they were when we first received them. So to do that we can either use some twine, okay, so we can use twine for bundling, gives a really nice natural look, or you can save the elastic bands that they that they were received on, or you can just purchase new ones and tie them back around, okay? So it's completely up to you. The way of doing that is by making sure all the blooms are sitting at even level. Bunch them all in. Okay. And then I'm going to put the elastic band around them. And there's a couple of different ways that this can be done. It's my preferred way. Okay, so it makes them nice and firm around that stem, okay, before we get them ready to go back into water. For the glasshouse stemmed stock, now these are generally higher in price as well. I'm going to decide that they're going to go in as single stems. So I'm not going to bundle them back up. I'm just going to pop them into a vase and sell them as single stems, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate the cutting process now. So with your flower cutting scissors, unlock them. Try and keep them locked as much as you can, particularly if you're putting them in your pockets. Okay. Now again, I want to make sure that those blooms are at a similar height. And then I'm going to find the stem that's the shortest out of the lot. And that's the level that I'm going to cut them all at. Okay. So we're always cutting away from ourselves, never towards. We don't want any cut fingers. And you're always cutting on a downward angle as well. Where possible, cut directly into your bin. I'm going to cut directly onto the towel just so that you can see what I'm doing here. So we're cutting approximately 2 centimetres length off the stem, and we're also cutting them on a sharp angle, as you can see there. Okay. Now the reason for cutting them approximately 2 centimetres is that we're ensuring that we've got a nice, clean, fresh cut and very fresh cell structure in the stem of the flower there, okay? If they've been out of water for some time, they can start to dry out, okay? So the cell structure in there won't be able to suck up or drink as much water as what a clean cut will from here. The reason for cutting them on an angle is that we get a larger surface area for the flower to be able to drink up that water. There is another reason, which I'll show you in just a moment. So I'm going to just cut them directly on an angle like that, at similar lengths to one another, and then they're going to go into this vase here, okay? All right, so just nice and in gently like that, okay? Now, these stems, if they're sitting at the bottom of the vase there, they actually can still drink up the water, okay? So if they were just sitting flat and it was a flat cut, it would really struggle to get water up. The flower's got to use more energy and more effort to get that water up underneath. So if it's on an angle, the water's getting up below there, okay? The other reason why we cut our flowers on a spear shape like that is when we're using them in foam. So into the foam, which we'll get to in later classes. When we're piercing into the foam, it's much easier for the flower stem to pierce in through and make a hole there, okay? So there's the 3 reasons for cutting our flowers on an angle. So that's vase number 1 done. We've got the lovely stock in there. And now we've got the bunches of stock. So these filled ones I'm going to bundle back up. I've got 1 more to bundle. And you can see here we've got lots of roots attached to the base here. So these guys are really fresh. Okay, so again, I'm actually going to cut above the roots. Okay, and the more that you practice this process, you'll get to cutting multiple stems all at once. So extremely efficient. Just cut these ones directly into the bin. And these two I'm going to pop into this lovely vase here, okay? So I'll just pop those aside for a moment. And I want to talk to you about the stems and the wastage as well, okay? So it is important to cut that minimum 2 centimetres off to your stems, and you might like to have a separate bin aside for green waste, okay? You might be able to do that within your area, so just check within your area whether they collect green waste or not, okay? Now, vase care is something that's extremely important, and making sure that we have some really nice, fresh, clean water. That's what our flowers most love, and clean vases. So we want to make sure that our vases don't have any bacteria in them before we even put our beautiful fresh flowers in there. So keeping your vase really nice and clean is of course paramount. Vinegar, I find, is one of the best things for cleaning your vases and keeping them bacteria free. So give them a really good clean and a good rinse. And then I just like to put clean fresh water in there. There are some products, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that you can use to stop that bacteria growing in the water. And I'll go through all the pros and cons for those. Okay, so keeping the water nice and clean in your vases, there are some products that florists use that you might like to use yourself. However, nothing goes any better than just clean vases and clean water, okay? But you might like to use some of these products yourself. There's a powdered version which you've probably received yourself when you've bought or received cut flowers, and a florist most often attaches these to a bunch. So you simply open the sachet and pour it into the water. It is best to pour it in and then top up the vase, just because it will dissolve a lot better. However, I find that the solution doesn't dissolve, quite as well as what this liquid version does. So this is my preferred choice out of any of the preservatives, and that's the liquid version. Again, pop it in and then top the vase off with water, because as I said, it will dissolve best. Okay, so these are the little bottles. You can just pierce that through. Okay, now there are instructions on the products as to what type of dilution that you should use. So this is heavily concentrated, so we just pop, well, I'm just going to pop for demonstration purposes, just drop a little bit in. Okay, and then as I said, then you would fill that vase up with water. It will stop bacteria growing in the water. They do have, both products, they do have a bleaching agent in them. And so that's one of the magic ways of stopping the bacteria growing. So you've possibly heard before that you can use products like bleach. I personally prefer to steer clear of bleach. There are some flowers where the petals of them are very porous, and so it will bleach the flower, and so you don't get that gorgeous vivid colour that you would otherwise normally see. Also, it's obviously not great for the environment, and at some point this vase water needs to be tipped down a sink. And of course we know where all that ends up going. The other product that some florists are using commercially is they're little tablets. Okay, so they're just tiny little tablets that go into the vase, and again that keeps the water nice and clean. The florist then, or yourself, don't actually have to change that water. You just keep topping it up, and the tablet, then you pop another tablet in there each time you top it up. So look, they do have a way of preserving water in that way, so that's a great thing. However, again, it is a chemical at the end of the day that's going into the water. So as I said, my preferred option, when possible, is just change the water very frequently. Every day is optimum. Not always possible. Every second day is great. So if you can do that and recut the stems each time just before you're popping them into the water, then you'll have extra longer living flowers. So that's what we're always looking for. So that's my take on vases and water.